one of the, I think that position's from. Please do take your seats. I should have said at the start of the service, if you have kids aged 0 to 3 who aren't going to Sunday school, you can make use of the creche corner over there where the lights are at any time, and don't worry at all about little ones making noise. We're going to turn to our second reading now. It's from the book of Obadiah in the Old Testament, and I'm going to read verses 1 to 15. The vision of Obadiah. This is what the sovereign Lord says about Edom. We have heard a message from the Lord. An envoy was sent to the nations to say, "Rise, let us go against her for battle. See, I will make you small among the nations. You will be utterly despised. The pride of your heart has deceived you, you who live in the clefts of the rocks and make your home on the heights. You who say to yourself, 'Who can bring me down to the ground?' Though you soar like the eagle and make your nest among the stars, from there I will bring you down, declares the Lord. If thieves came to you, if robbers in the night, oh, what a disaster awaits you. Would they not steal only as much as they wanted? If grape pickers came to you, would they not leave a few grapes? But how Esau will be ransacked, his hidden treasures pillaged. All your allies will force you to the border. Your friends will deceive and overpower you. Those who eat your bread will set a trap for you, but you will not detect it. In that day, declares the Lord, will I not destroy the wise men of Edom, those of understanding in the mountains of Esau? Your warriors, Teman, will be terrified, and everyone in Esau's mountains will be cut down in the slaughter. Because of the violence against your brother, Jacob, you will be covered with shame. You will be destroyed forever. On the day you stood aloof while strangers carried off his wealth, and foreigners entered his gates, and cast lots for Jerusalem, you were like one of them. You should not gloat over your brother in the day of his misfortune, nor rejoice over the people of Judah in the day of their destruction, nor boast so much in the day of their trouble. You should not march through the gates of my people in the day of their disaster, nor gloat over them in their calamity in the day of their disaster, nor seize their wealth in the day of their disaster. You should not wait at the crossroads to cut down the fugitives, nor hand over the survivors in the day of their trouble. The day of the Lord is near for all nations. As you have done, it will be done to you. Your deeds will return upon your own head. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. The book of Obadiah is the shortest book in the Old Testament. It's one of those books where you need the contents page to find your way to it in the Bible, because you can easily just turn straight over it. And it's a story of a kingdom that really we should never ever have heard of. One of the books that I got for Christmas that I have not been able to put down is called Lost Realms, and it's a story of all the many different successor kingdoms to the Roman Empire in Britain. Little kingdoms that we barely know anything about. We have these tiny scraps of data, maybe a line in an old Welsh poem that just indicates that there was a great kingdom that existed in somewhere like Powys, Elmet, which is up in Yorkshire, Lindsay in Lincolnshire. These are tiny little kingdoms in the grand scheme of things that have barely left their trace in history. The kingdom of Edom, which we read about in Obadiah, which Obadiah is about, is of that sort. There's a map that will come from the screen. Thank you very much, Matthew. You probably can't see it even. It is just at the bottom here. So this is what we now know as modern-day Israel. There's the kingdom of Judah. There's Edom just below it. The big guy, the guy who has all of that shaded stuff, is Babylon. He's the great guy. He's the sort of the empire that everyone would have known about. And little Edom at the bottom there is a nothing, less than Elmet, less than Lindsay, less than the kingdom of Powys. But some 1,000 years before those successor states of the Roman Empire in Britain ever were invented, this kingdom of Edom gets a whole book about them in the Old Testament. Gets a lot of airtime, actually, across all different parts of Scripture. Thank you, Matthew. You can have that map off the screen now. This Edom is a nothing kingdom by the standards of the world. And yet God is concerned about them. So concerned that he sends a prophet to speak to them, as you probably picked up in that reading, speak against them. And he's particularly concerned about their relationship with their neighbor just to the north, Judah. What's happened to Judah is nothing short of disastrous at this particular point in history. It's a sort of part of the Bible storyline that we can often sort of overlook or push to one side. The story of the nation of Israel, Judah and Israel, going into exile, being carted off to Babylon, that great empire. And time and again in the Old Testament, we read it happens, that terrible fate, a nation basically wiped out. It happens under the very hand of God. It happens as a consequence of Judah and Israel, the nation chosen by God, rejecting him, for the benefit of this people, Edom. And the problem for Edom is the way that they've reacted, the way that they've responded to what God has done to Judah in particular. Did you hear it? Gloating in verse 11. On that day you stood aloof while strangers carried off his wealth and foreigners entered his gates. Verse 12, you should not gloat over your brother in the day of his misfortune. They've watched Judah go into exile. They've watched it all happen before their eyes, and there's maybe a bit of schadenfreude about it. At the very least, well, they're getting their comeuppance, aren't they? They're getting what they deserve, serves them right. If you've seen on social media how easy it is to demonize people who are just a little bit different from you. It's that sort of thing that's going on here. Near neighbours. I don't want to reference England v Scotland after what happened yesterday, but you get the picture. When those sort of near national rivalries turn sour, well, in the moment when it all goes wrong for Judah, Edom is there gloating. And that's because, secondly, their deeper issue, if you like, is pride. And that's where Obadiah begins with this prophecy. In verse 3, the pride of your heart has deceived you, you who live in the clefts of the rocks and make your home on the heights, you who say to yourself, who can bring me down to the ground? Now we know that this part of the world where this kingdom of Edom existed was a hill country. So they would have sort of hilly fortresses to keep them safe, to protect them. And so you can begin to see what's going on here. They watch Judah suffer this terrible fate at the hands of Babylon, and they think that will never happen to us. We're fine, we're safe. Couldn't possibly be a problem that comes our way. Now, if they'd have thought for just a moment, if they'd have engaged with the world as it really is, and listened to the messages coming out, in fact, from Judah and Israel during the years up to exile, the prophets are very clear. This is God's doing. And if the very God who can do that to Judah, he can also do something to you, Edom. But pride has warped their way of seeing the world. And it has led them down catastrophic paths. And they think they'll be perfectly safe and no one will touch them. I remember when we lived in Cambridge, Jonathan Aitken, the former MP, came to give a talk at the church that we were part of. And I remember seeing him stand at the front of church, huge, tall guy. And he just dominated the room. Extraordinary presence. And he spoke with the most well-spoken voice, had no notes, and just spoke for 40 minutes. And everyone was completely captivated by his story. And if you know the story of Jonathan Aitken, I think he was on the Andrew Neil show just last weekend. It's a story of extraordinary rise, becoming a cabinet minister in John Major's government, and then a terrible, terrible fall. He got involved in some business dealings in Saudi Arabia. He started to lie about it, and then he just lied and lied and lied. And he drew his family in to lie about it too. And he in fact stood on the fact that he was telling the truth. He took the Guardian newspaper to court, but eventually it all collapsed. And he went to prison for perjury. This is what he says in his memoirs called Pride and Perjury. He says this: pride was the root cause of all my evils. Without pride, there would have been no libel action, no attempt to defend the writs bill payment with a lie, no will to win the battle in court on an end justifies the means basis. There would have been no deceit of friends, family and colleagues, no sword of truth speech, no involvement of my wife and daughter in the front line of the war with the guardian. If I had been blessed with a small helping of humility, instead of possessed by a surfeit of pride, the entire tragedy would have been avoided. Jonathan Aitken's fall was famous. He went to prison for 18 months. In fact, he became a Church of England minister. So there is recovery and hope for some people. The devastating fall that Edom is going to experience in verses 5 to 7 is of another scale altogether. There's something slightly comic about it, darkly comic. If thieves came to you, if robbers in the night, would they not steal only as much as they wanted? Thieves generally don't come in and steal everything from a house unless they're determined to sort of strip the whole thing. They take what they want. When Jenny and we experienced a burglary last year, they took nothing but a single pillowcase. They found nothing worth taking in our house, except the pillowcase probably to go and rob someone else's house. They only take what they want. That's a true story. But Edom is going to experience complete wipeout. Complete devastation. If grape pickers came to you, would they not leave a few grapes? Grape pickers don't, in Israel, in this time, clear the whole field. They didn't have the technology. They left stuff behind. But Edom's going to experience a once over, a twice over, a third time over. It's devastating. Now here's the strange thing. This conquest of Edom, in the grand scheme of things, wasn't really anything to write home about. Like I said, it was a tiny nation. It maybe crops up once in the historical record when a Babylonian emperor goes and wipes them out. Almost, though, like a wasp at a picnic. Just get out the way, squash it, be done. But God here says two extraordinary things about what's going to happen to Edom, this terrible fate that awaits them. Number one, it is his doing, altogether. He's promising in advance this is going to happen. And number two, the reason it's going to happen is because of the way that Edom has treated Judah, crucially, his brother. Because did you hear in the reading, sometimes this nation is called Edom, this place, but sometimes he's called Esau. And he's going to be punished for the way he's treated his brother, Jacob. Edom, this place, this kingdom is actually descended from Esau, the brother of Jacob. And Judah and Israel, the people God chose, is descended from Jacob. These two brothers, you read about them in the book of Genesis. And here's the extraordinary thing that, if you like, God calls Edom to account about. He says, you should have treated this people to your north better, not simply because it's not right to gloat over someone who's in misfortune, but because they are your kindred. They are your brothers and sisters. So as we begin to think about what this means for us today, I suppose this isn't just a warning about the dangers of pride, although it is that, about the way that pride can warp your very view of reality so that you believe things that just aren't true because of something inside of you. It's not just that. It's even more pointed, I think, for us. It's something like this. How do we treat people who are different from us, who are our brothers and sisters, in a place like a church? Or in other churches, if they're so different from us that we don't belong in the same church family. And particularly people who I guess we already feel a little bit like, we're not really that close to. They're slightly in a different world from me. Not quite England v Scotland in rugby levels of rivalry maybe, but they're just different from me. Because here's the extraordinary thing. Edom watched Judah fall. He watched disaster happen to his northern neighbor. And Judah was very clearly in the wrong. He was being punished by God. And Edom enjoyed it and said, that'll never happen to me. And, we would never put it so bluntly ourselves. If something terrible happened to someone who, we're kind of in the same church as, but we're not really that close to. But here's the challenge for us. That all of us at some level will be thinking, well, the message of this book is probably a message for... There's someone else here, maybe. There's someone else in the Church of England. There's someone else in a different church from my own who really needs to hear this. We might even think, well, I've actually been someone who's been gloated over. I've seen other people in their pride treat me badly. Edom could point to all of Judah's failings. Edom could look at Judah and say, look, that's a disaster of a nation. But the result eventually for Edom itself was itself to fall to be on the wrong side of their creator and judge. So if we first of all hear this message and think it is for someone else out there needs to hear this, then it shows it is actually far more our problem than we might dare to think. In his essay, The Trouble with X, C.S. Lewis pictures this sort of thing. He invites us to think about someone in our life who we have a bit of an issue with. Maybe someone who's winding us up, being unkind to us, whatever it is. And he imagines someone saying, well, why don't you talk to them about it? Why don't you just have it out with them? And we say, oh no, they wouldn't understand that person. That's the trouble with X, whoever X is. They have a temper, or they're lazy, they can't be bothered. They're too caught up in their selfishness, whatever it is. And because of that thing, every time we try and make progress with this person, try and reconcile with them, try and be their friend, it always fails. Then C.S. Lewis imagines, well, what does God make of all this? He says this, God sees, like you, how all the people in your home or your job or whatever are in various degrees awkward or difficult. But when he looks into that home or factory or office, he sees one more person of the same kind. The one you never see. I mean, of course, yourself. And that is the next great step in wisdom, to realize that you also are just that sort of person. You also have a fatal flaw in your character. It is no good passing this over with some vague general admission such as, of course I know I have my faults. It is important to realize that there is some really fatal flaw in you. Something which gives the others just that same feeling of despair which their flaws give you. And it is almost certainly something you don't know about. He compares it to having bad breath, which everyone knows about but you. But why, you ask, don't the others tell me? Believe me, they have tried to tell you over and over again, and you just couldn't take it. Perhaps a good deal of what you call their nagging or bad temper are just their attempts to make you see the truth. What God is concerned about are the tiny nations like Edom, the tiny world that I live in, and that you live in, the tiny church that you're part of. And there is good news coming in the book of Obadiah. The second half of the book is full of hope and promise and joy and expectation. But part of the good news that we'll hear next week is that God's welcome of us doesn't depend on us cleaning up our act first. Doesn't depend on us giving the appearance of being kind of people who've got it all together. It starts with us owning the state of our own hearts. In all kinds of ways, admitting how we fall short of God and his good standards and purposes and plans for us. But maybe particularly in the way that however alien Edom might sound, however strange, like one of those strange lost kingdoms in Britain that we'd never heard of, far, far away in a lost time, actually, if you like, this central issue of the human heart, that those who are our near neighbours, we can look down on with the worst sort of pride and think the worst of them when they're right there alongside us. is something deadly serious before the Lord. And so what we must do first of all is cry to him for mercy. Mercy upon ourselves and upon our church. Let's take a few moments in silence to consider how we want to respond in our own hearts. And I'm going to lead us then in some prayers of intercession and in response to what we've heard.